Do you think there is hope for a potential bounce back season for Kristaps, or is this just kind of the new normal for him? So we will start with the Dallas Mavericks, who, again, didn't do a ton this offseason. They traded Josh Richardson for Moses Brown, and they got Reggie Bullock.
That's a lot, Brian. That's a lot right there.
And then they got Reggie Bullock in free agency. So Reggie Bullock's going to step in place of Josh Richardson. Yeah. How much of an upgrade do you think he's going to be?
Significantly so, because I think there is some truth to the idea that Josh Richardson needs the ball in his hands a little bit more. I don't think he is, the knockdown 3-point shooter, the so-called 3-and-D guy that we all kind of envision him to be. That guy who'll just come in, spot up, and play elite defense. He's a little bit more hungry with the ball in his hands, I think. And that also means moving forward, it's going to be a tough time to kind of figuring out how to tailor a game for him for the right team, because which team out there doesn't have a player on their roster that'll be better at creating offense than Josh Richardson, right? So,
right.
But Reggie Bullock is what they're looking for. He's the guy who'll come and play defense, and he'll hit the 3-ball. Now, is Reggie Bullock an elite defender? I don't think so, which is okay. Like, you don't need to be Tony Allen out there with a 3-pointer, but he's decent. He's got good size. He has some agility. He moves around well, and then he can hit the 3-ball, and he's fully capable of being this spot-up guy who doesn't take over possessions, even though he can do certain things off the dribble. I'm not discounting that, but he is more of a pure 3-and-D guy, which ultimately is what you need to have alongside Luka Doncic. So in overall talent, I think Josh Richardson is more talented, but I just think the fit of a Reggie Bullock is so much better. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you're building around Luka. Everything you do if you're the Mavericks has to be, how do these guys fit with Luka? Right. And I think you're totally right in that Reggie Bullock is a much better fit next to Luka than Josh Richardson, because he can just be more of a catch and shoot guy instead of having, you don't, if you have Luka Doncic on your team, you are wasting possessions if you are having Josh Richardson serve as your secondary ball handler. Like, you just don't even cut all those possessions out. Just give the ball to Luka, because now we can have, it's going to be Luka and then Reggie Bullock and Tim Hardaway Jr. flanking him on the wings, which are, two guys. Bullock last year shot 41% from 3 on 6.1 attempts per game. Hardaway's been on fire ever since he got to the Mavericks. He 39.1% on 7.6 attempts per game last year. I would assume Bullock's attempts, his career high is 6.2 per game, 3-point attempts in a season. I'm going to guess he sets a new high this year. I think both of these guys are just going to have a green light next to Luka. And, he shot 42.5% on catch and shoot threes. A grand majority of his 3-point attempts last year were of the catch and shoot variety. So, yeah, I think he's going to be a fantastic fit next to Luka in particular, and just on this Mavericks team. Yeah.
I think, one of the biggest questions for this team is going to be Kristaps Porzingis. He, if you look at the box score stats last year, like, averaged 20.1 points, 8.9 rebounds per game, basically right in line with his career averages, shot 47.6 overall, 37.6 from 3. Like, that seems good, but this is one of those cases where the eye tests and the box score don't quite line up.
Yeah.
He just wasn't the same player, and we saw that especially in the playoffs when he averaged only 13 points per game. Wasn't the same player that he was prior to the ACL tear. So do you think there is hope for a potential bounce back season for Kristaps, or is this just kind of the new normal for him?
No, I won't rule anything out. He's only 26 and a recent 26. So, I don't want to be that guy who paints him as, the ship has sailed. Because like you just said, this is still a guy who averaged 20 and 9 and hit 2+ threes per game. So it's just a matter of how can you get more impact from him in other areas than just these catch and shoot situations? Because he's a guy who, when he was in New York, he would put the ball on the floor. He would attack the rim. He would go in and hammer it down on opponents and really be this inside-outside threat. Whereas in Dallas, he's become significantly more perimeter oriented. He's someone who doesn't really dribble a whole lot. He's become a little bit more robotic. So now the time has come to figure out, how do you unlock what his skill set is? Because it is a significant one. I mean, he's 7'3", he is mobile. So you would need to find some sort of solution. Does that mean he becomes more of a rim runner? I wouldn't hate that. I think there's a lot of logic in a 7'3" guy getting near the basket, Brian. Like, that's just logic.
Sure.
But I don't want to give him post-ups. I think that's ridiculous. So maybe try to, I don't know, lock him in a gym and force him to play or watch Tyson Chandler highlights for like 2 days. And then say, mix that in with the 3-point shot. Like, roll to the rim or pop out, nothing in between. Maybe that's a little bit cold, and maybe that takes a little bit away from his own creativity or preference of creativity. But he'll become a better player if he took that variety of that approach to basketball, I think.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, he did attempt more shots than ever before right around the rim last year than he did before. But he did cut out, a lot of the shots between 16 feet and the 3-point line. It wasn't his career low, but, second lowest percentage from there, lowest percentage from 10 to 16. So he is already kind of working that Morey ball, around the rim, and threes were reducing the mid-range. But until he gets more confidence back, I think that's a good approach. And then, I think the bigger question honestly might be defensively, because he just did not seem to have the lateral agility that he once did. And, it was hard to figure out where to put him, especially since Dallas tends to play another big with him, whether it's Kleba, Willie Cauley-Stein, Dwight Powell. So, I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges for new head coach Jason Kidd is how, in theory, you shouldn't have to hide him defensively. He's 7'3". He's a great shot blocker. You should be able to figure out a way to make him effective. But last year, Dallas's defense, I think, was 20. They were tied for 20th with Washington. So that's not going to cut it. And then, their offense took a step back from the year before when they were nuclear, because they swapped out Seth Curry for Josh Richardson. So hopefully the addition of Bullock will get their offense back to, somewhere in the top 5. If Kristaps has a bounce back year, that could help as well. And then they're not going to be a top 10 defensive team, but if they can at least be league average, I think that will boost their chances of finishing as a top 6 seed in the West.
Yeah. I just want to point out, you brought up that last year was a career high shot attempts at the rim. You're right. That is definitely accurate, but it was only 22% of his offense. So I think my point is it needs to go up much higher. 40% of his shots should come near the rim, 45%, and then the rest should be threes. It should just be he should be disallowed mid-range shots. I know Daryl Morey is in Philly, but that approach needs to be copied over to Kristaps in Dallas, I think. I just don't see the value in him. Let me just look this up. I think I saw this somewhere. So, I have it here. So between 3 feet and 16 feet, 31.1% of his offense came from that. That's, I get that there are a couple push shots there that we can take out of the equation because 3 feet and 5 feet, that's still close to the basket. But that's still a significant portion of your offense that comes from an area where, it's all not all that efficient. And that's not to say don't create mid-range jump shots. I think we've gone too far into that. But for Kristaps and his body type and where he is as a basketball player and his height and ability, why not just try to optimize him in the spots where he will objectively have most influence?
Yeah, I mean, he shot 40.2 from between 10 and 16 last year, 37.7 from 16 to 3-point range. So it's not that, we said this with Chris Paul during the finals or during the playoffs. It's like, it's not that the mid-range should go extinct for every player. Like if you have that shot in your bag and you can hit it at a 45 to 50% clip like Chris Paul was, cool, keep firing away. But if you're shooting 37.7% from between 16 and 3-point range, and you're shooting 37.6% from 3-point range, that 1/1000th of a percentile does not make up for the extra point that you get if you just take a few more steps back.
Right.
So I think that's what you're getting at there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and sure, like once in a while, if he'll get like a completely wide open 16-footer, like, okay, sure. Like, I'm not saying completely, I'm just saying don't seek them out. Like if they come within the flow of the offense and Luka gets you a wide open 16-footer, shoot that bad boy. That's good. That's fine. Just make sure that the shots that you're getting, if you're Kristaps Porzingis, is optimized within the efficiency range. And as we know, Brian, a dunk or a layup has a significantly higher chance of going in than a mid-range pull-up, for example. So I would just rather see that. But no, to answer your earlier question, I'm not out on Kristaps yet. There definitely needs to be some alignments, but I have to assume that he's still solid. Do I think he's a secondary star, someone who will eventually be like the tier 1A to Luka's 1B or the way around, 1B to 1A? No, I think it's very clearly Luka is the top dog and Kristaps is probably a few levels below, but that needn't be a problem, I think.
Yeah. So you brought up Luka. He, according to FanDuel Sportsbook, is going into the season right now as the clear favorite for MVP at plus 440. Joel Embiid and Kevin Durant are tied for second at plus 750. Giannis Antetokounmpo is at plus 850 with Stephen Curry. So those are the top five, but Luka has a sizable advantage over these other four guys. Do you think, I mean, you and I both picked him as our MVP last year.
Yeah.
And that did not end well for us. Are you going back to the well this year? Do you think he should be the MVP favorite going into the year?
I mean, he would have been my MVP favorite if they hadn't hired Jason Kidd.
That's fair. It's a fair concern.
I just don't like people in the comments are going to be like, "Oh, are you still on Jason Kidd?" Like, yeah, but also just for the fact that he's a head coach, which I don't think he should be. I mean, we've all read the Giannis book by now. It's not pretty, and Kidd doesn't really strike me as the type of person who's going to be very introspective and go, "I've learned, I've changed." No, that's your criminal rep has really proven that you don't change a whole lot. So you know what? That doesn't mean I believe that he'll change as a head coach either. His approach to basketball and to managing players, I think, is going to rub Luka the wrong way before Christmas, honestly. So I just don't think that those two are going to be in for a long marriage whatsoever. And I think that could hurt Luka this year. Maybe he'll have tremendous stats. Maybe Kidd will give him the ball, say, do whatever. Maybe he'll average 32, 11, and 11 by Christmas, and everyone will be, oh, Luka is the MVP. But I don't think the Mavs will have the winning record to go with it.
Yeah,
because that is how skeptical I am of Jason Kidd.
Well, I think that's what gives me the most pause is, it's unlikely that you're going to win MVP unless you're coming from a top 3, top 4 seed. Mean, Russell Westbrook did a couple of years ago, but it often goes to a player on one of the best teams in the league, or at least in your conference. So right now, I mean, I put the Lakers, the Suns, the Jazz clearly over the Mavericks. I think the Warriors, if they stay healthy, I would put them over the Mavericks as well. Nuggets and Clippers have health concerns, of course, with Murray and Kawhi. So I think the Mavericks might be able to leapfrog those two teams, but Portland is still out there. I mean, you and I are both very bullish on the Nance acquisition.
Yep.
Memphis could be on the rise. After that, I mean, there is a chance that Dallas is like the 4th or 5th best team in the West right now. And if that's the case, I think Luka has a shot at MVP just because they're, like Kevin Durant is going to Harden and Kyrie are going to siphon votes from him, and then Joel Embiid. We don't know what's up with Ben Simmons, who he's going to be playing with. Giannis, I think, like if I had to bet right now, I'd put money on Giannis more than anyone else, because I just think now that he won a title, that monkey's off his back. The Bucks I think they're just going to steamroll this year.
Yeah,
like they don't have to worry about, last year it was like, we need to experiment during the regular season, try out all these different things. We're going to take a slight step back, so we're ready for the playoffs. They did it last year. Now they could just go destroy again. So, spoiler alert for our awards pod. Right now, I'm leaning Giannis over Luka, but I think Luka deserves to be in the conversation because, like your skepticism of Kidd is valid, but it is worth remembering. I mean, the guy is a Hall of Fame point guard. Like, if maybe Jared Dudley bridges the gap between the two guys, and there is a chance that Jason Kidd is very good for Luka, even if he's not great for the rest of the team. So I do think Luka could be heading for a career year, which is crazy to say about a guy who averaged 28, 8, and 8 over the last 2 years. But, it wouldn't surprise me if we're talking about like 30-point triple doubles from him more often than not. It's more just, I think Giannis and the Bucks have such a clear road to the top 2 seed in the East, whereas it's hard for me to see the Mavericks. Like, it feels like the 4 seed is their absolute ceiling.
You raise something interesting here. So let's assume that Kidd is just as much of a train wreck as a coach than as we think that he will be.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a limit to like how bad you can be as a coach, but where the team still wins despite you because the players are just that good? Or for example, that your lead guy in Luka is just that good that it doesn't really matter if Kidd is horrible?
Mark Jackson would say yes.
I don't think Mark himself would say yes.
Right. Or like Jason Kidd with the Bucks. I mean, I know they took a big step forward when they replaced him with Budenholzer, but they did take a step forward under him.
They did. That is fair. And I like the Mark Jackson comp as well, because he was not good.
Nope.
But Steph kind of started rolling. Clay started rolling. Maybe the presence of Kidd just doesn't matter. And Luka is like, okay, you know what? I'm going to ignore you every time you say something stupid. And I'm just going to go out and do what I know that I can do. I think
it matters more in the playoffs than it does in the regular season.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's where he could really fail. But I don't have the Mavs, even with a good coach, as a finals contender quite yet.
No, I don't either.